So, hello everybody again. My name is Mike McBride. I work in the Dean's office in a department that we call Outreach and Student Recruitment. So our office assists students that are transitioning from high school or community colleges, or if they're interested in grad programs, we assist them with transition to grad school as well if they're in undergrad programs. So today we have with us, our focus today, of course, is aviation and unmanned aerial systems. And we're lucky to have with us Mark O'Brien, who is the chair of that program, or all those programs. And he's got a lot to share with us today about what we offer and how we get you up in the air and keep everybody safe and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark. I think he has a PowerPoint. Please, if you have questions, we have a Q&A feature down below, as well as a chat feature. I'm not sure if the chat feature is turned on. If you can't put questions in the chat feature, please put them in the Q&A. And I'll watch those as we go along, Mark. Thank you.
All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's see if I can find the right button to do. Are you able to see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So let me go ahead and set her up here. So, okay, there we are. So welcome everybody. As Mike said, my name is Mark O'Brien, and I'm in the aviation program, chair of the program. I'm starting my, well, I don't even want to think about it, but I came out here in 1997. And so I've been with the ASU since then, and have seen the program grow significantly in the years that I've been here. To give you a little information about our program, we have about 450 undergraduate students as of fall 2020. When I first got here, I think we had about 30 students. So, you know, it is considerably increased over the years. We've been seeing steady increases each year because, of course, up till, you know, our little speed bump we have here with the COVID, aviation was really increasing quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure it will again. So we've been seeing 10% increases in student population. We have about 13 to 14% female students in our program. We would love to see more. We have a very active women in aviation chapter, and our female students who are in our program are all awesome students, and they do very, very well in the programs. About 6% international students. We have 4 undergraduate concentrations. So the degree is aeronautical management technology, but there are concentrations that relate to professional flight, air transportation management, air traffic management, and then unmanned aerial. We also have a graduate degree in aviation management and human factors. That is, it's a traditional 2-year graduate degree program, but we also have a 4+1 accelerated program that we'll talk about a little later on. Yeah, there are our concentrations right there. Some of the things that we do in the concentrations is the first 2 years, everyone takes what we call core courses that are foundational courses in aviation that apply to all the concentrations. What's nice about that is twofold. One is it gets you a chance to meet students from among all the concentrations, for one thing. But also it enables you in the 2 years that you're taking those courses to explore some of the other concentrations, because some people will come initially and they want to be a professional flight major, for instance, but they realize, wow, there are other career paths in aviation that they didn't really know about. And so it offers a student to be able to consider changing a major without losing any previous credits, because all those core courses count toward any of the concentrations. A couple of the caveats is that all students, we require an internship. The internships can be in the industry. We have several with airlines and aviation companies where a student might take a semester off to just complete the internship at that company. But we also recognize that many students want to stay on campus to complete the degree program, you know, as quickly as they can. So we do have some that are internal in our program, usually helping instructors, course instructors out with laboratory internships, as well as some local ones. Like for instance, Allegiant Airlines is kind of our hometown airline. They fly out of the airport that our professional flight students fly out of. And, so a student could do an internship there and not necessarily leave the campus. We also encourage students that may double major. Now, again, with today's kind of focus on people who are interested in unmanned aerial, we find that the double major with air traffic management is a really nice blend between the skill sets for unmanned aerial, but also recognizing that many unmanned aerial operators will be dealing with multiple UAVs somewhere down the line, and having that skill set that our students learn in air traffic management will kind of complement. And the good thing is that usually it doesn't necessarily require any additional semesters. You can complete all the concentration courses, through a 4-year, program. Okay, so the graduate degree is in aviation management and human factors. We have a couple of several simulators in our campus simulator building, as well as an altitude chamber, a hyperbaric chamber. So it offers some research opportunities for people who are working on their graduate degree. We also have a lot of courses that and work with people in human systems engineering. So there's lots of opportunities for graduate students to do some research while they're on campus. So the first concentration we'll look at is air traffic management. Our aviation program, the ATC program, is an FAA CTI program. Some years back, about 10 years back, I think, maybe a little longer than that, the FAA reached out to aviation universities like ours and wanted to set up a program that would offer a hiring preference. And I have to say that with a caveat, because it basically offers a second bid for applicants that want to become air traffic controllers, and a little bit of a reduction in the amount of time that an applicant that gets hired by the FAA would have to spend in the Oklahoma City program. So our curriculum met that once we established it, and basically what the students get in this particular concentration is instruction in tower operations, TRACON, which is terminal radar control, and then en route. So those are the three basic positions that air traffic controllers flow toward. So tower, I think that's probably the one that everyone's familiar with. That's the one that's the person that's in a control tower that clears airplanes to take off and land, and also to taxi to an active runway. TRACON is a radar controller that handles sequencing airplanes in from the en route structure to the terminal area. So about 30 miles around an airport, and they give headings and altitudes for planes to fly to sequence them for landing, and also to sequence departures leaving the area. And then en route are the folks that deal with airplanes that are in the cruise altitudes over several states. So our students are trained in all three of those areas, because those are the three areas that you would bid on once you become hired by the FAA. So it's a combination of lecture and labs. So we have simulation. The picture you see there is a Sky Harbor Tower simulator. So that has a 360-degree kind of look for the whole airport area. Students will actually approve airplanes for pushback and taxi to the active runway, and then clear them for takeoffs and landings. And learn the different positions that are up in the tower. And there's voice recognition software on that simulator. So students have to use the proper phraseology for the AI aircraft to respond. So that's a good way for them to learn communications in ATC. But we also have TRACON and en route simulation as well. So you'll get a full-scale lecture, and then you'll also have lab periods where you practice what you've learned in the classroom. We've understand that there could be a bit of a delay from when students graduate to where they might get picked up by the FAA. So we've interwoven a certification for an aircraft dispatcher certificate. It's an FAA certificate that allows you to work for an airline in flight operations doing dispatch. It's taught by an aircraft dispatcher, local a woman who works for Mesa Airlines, and that's an optional certificate that you can work toward while you're in the air traffic management concentration, because all the courses that we've set that series of courses that are required for that certification, all part of the curriculum for air traffic management. Our next concentration we'll talk about is probably the most flexible one. It's air transportation management. It's essentially a business focus. Not only are you learning all the terminology and the whole aviation language and things that go into aviation in general, but also you'll get some business courses. So our graduates end up in airport management, airport planning. You could work as a manager in an airline company for revenue management, for instance, corporate aviation of the FAA. So it gives students the widest variety of places where they might end up moving to after graduation. And one other little note is that we talked about internships. The students who do the internships in the air transportation management area usually end up turning that internship into an actual job offer. So that's nice to know. We have something set up with American Airlines for students to do the internship with American. Their internship will turn into a position with revenue management in Dallas, which is kind of a neat thing for our management graduates. The newest of our concentrations is the unmanned aerial systems. It's new, but obviously it's about 6 years old now, but it's still new to me. It's an operations focus of UAS. When the curriculum was originally set up, it was a bit more of an engineering type, but most of the students that we've seen in our concentrations are more hands-on and user oriented. So we know we've been pretty good with our professional flight program in terms of how we know how to do that area, in terms of getting our students to get their pilot certificates and learn how to fly as a crew. We've kind of adopted the same type of a scenario with our UAS program. So it's a series of lecture and labs. I think there's 5 courses that are specific to UAS. And we also, as one of the courses actually prepares you for the Part 107 certification. So you can actually get your remote pilot operator certificate in the program. There's simulation for that, as well as actual UAV vehicles that you'll fly. The simulator system is used in our junior and senior year for learning crew procedures. And so that simulator actually operates with 2 different positions. You have an unmanned operator as well as a sensor operator. So we're able to interweave crew coordination and crew resource management, modules in that as well. So there's a series of flight training missions that you'll do in the simulators there, as well as actually flying hard UAVs, out at the flight line. And then again, Part 107 certification. Yeah, the most of the graduates that we've had have moved on mainly to either they're entrepreneurial, whereas they start companies for, say, real estate, photography, infrastructure inspections, things like that. To we've had some graduates go on to General Atomics in San Diego. And then we've also had a couple who have working as a contractor in the military So it really runs the gamut between civilian and military. We've had most of our graduates are basically in the civilian area right now. But again, as we get more graduates, we'll see more, probably more of an equal pathway between civilian and military. Professional flight. This is our largest AMT concentration. It's probably the most recognizable because everyone knows about airline pilots. So we get most of our freshman students kind of start out in pro flight. It's for students who want to become a professional pilot, mainly an airline pilot focus. The regional and major airlines are looking at shortages in pilots. Now, again, I always say that with this little speed bump right now, it's obviously slowed down a bit, but looking at future 20 years, in the future here, it's still going to be a very dynamic industry where the airlines are going to need to replace a considerable amount of people who are going to be retiring, and with the expansions, worldwide with aviation. So our focus is mainly professional flight because that's where airline pilots, because that's where most are needed. We have ASU doesn't own their own airplanes, so we have a third-party provider called ATP Flight Academy. They're probably the largest flight academy in the country. They've got satellite operations all over the United States. That's one of the reasons why we were interested in partnering with them, because of the ability for our graduates, if they still need to build some flight time, they can, bid to go to one of the ATP flight academies to fly as a flight instructor throughout the country. We have our students basically we encourage them to do 3 training flights a week. That ensures that you're able to stay proficient, and it's more effective at getting all your certificates and ratings done by your junior year, which will enable you then to be hired by ATP to work as a flight instructor. The good thing about that is 2 things. One is, by the time you become a flight instructor, you don't have to pay for flying anymore. And secondly, you're actually getting paid, and you're being able to log that flight time toward the required amount of hours you need before you can move on to the airlines. So 3 times a week is an effective way to get all your flight training done and stay proficient, and still be at ASU to be able to work as a flight instructor.
Hey, Mark, there's a question by one student asking how many students are in the professional flight concentration.
We have about 140 students in pro flight right now. Typically, we have about 60 each freshman year that start out in pro flight. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because I don't know. I've talked with different university chairs, and some of the universities that own their own aircraft at times have a difficult time having availability. So they sometimes have to put students on a waiting list, because they just don't have the number of aircraft or flight instructors. That's the beauty about ATP. They've got such a huge fleet. We've never run into a situation where students, that there aren't enough airplanes to fly or flight instructors to instruct. So it's efficient from that standpoint, for sure. And actually, Mike, if you would, because I for some reason I can't see Q&A on this thing. So if you monitor those and then relay me the questions, that'd be great.
Yeah. So does the professional flight program earn students the R-ATP or the normal ATP?
That's a great question. Yes, we do. We're one of the aviation universities, or I think the FAA calls it Institution of Higher Learning, that is approved to issue the restricted ATP. What that is it allows a student to get hired by an airline at 1,000 hours of total time, as opposed to the traditional 1,500. It also allows the graduate to get their ATP while they're with the airline at a reduced age, because it's 23 years old as a standard ATP certificate. And one of the things that's sometimes confusing is that our flight academy provider is called ATP, but the ATP that we're talking about is the Airline Transport Pilot Certificate. And yes, we offer the reduced flight time ATP certificate in our program, assuming that's completing the program, which is all the professional flight curriculum, as well as doing both the instrument rating and the commercial certificate at our approved flight provider, which is ATP Flight Academy, under what they call FAR Part 141. So only the students that have completed those 2 check rides under Part 141 and complete professional flight are eligible for the restricted ATP when they graduate. Good question.
For the student that's asking for a link to the video of this session, I'll find out where those are going to be posted later. I think you're going to need to contact Kaylee Graham, who I work with, directly by email, and then she'll send you a link. So I'll get you her email address here quickly. Does the professional flight concentration qualify for Western WUI is the question.
Pro-flight does not. The management degree does. Air transportation management does, for sure.
Is it required to earn the R-ATP, or can you enter the program with other previous certificates to get a head start?
Another great question. We encourage students to come in with their private certificate in hand. That way, ATP at Flight Academy can put you right in the instrument rating. The reason for that also is we've seen, Greg Files, who's our professor who leads the pro flight concentration, he's a faculty lead for it. He also coordinates the students who are doing flight training at ATP with the ASU program as well. So he kind of watches over the students who are doing the flight training. He's done some little research on his own to find out what the success rate is with students who start and actually complete the pro flight, concentration to graduation. And 75% of the people that actually come to the university with a private pilot certificate in hand finish the pro flight. And I think it's because, if you're already, when you get your private certificate, you're already well informed in aviation, and you've already been through the whole flight training. So you kind of understand how that all works. But also you've shown that this is probably something you want to do, right? Whereas sometimes we get students that start out in pro flight and they never really have flown before. And so, they start doing the flight training at ATP and realize, oh, gee, I don't really think I really want to be a pilot after all. And then we don't necessarily lose them as students. They might move into one of our other concentrations. But it's nice to have the private certificate in hand when you come here, because then they can put you right into the instrument and you'll be that much further ahead. And I have to also say that flight training with our flight provider, it's an expensive, flight training program. Reason being is that all their aircraft are very late model, Cessna 172s with the Garmin 1000 suite, GPS glass cockpit thing, and Piper Seminoles, all brand new airplanes, and they rent considerably more than what you might see an aircraft that might be at a fixed base operator or flight school at a small airport, where the airplanes might be a little bit older and rent for a little bit less money. So I think those are the two things. One is you'll be, if you come in with a private, you've already done a check ride, you understand the whole flight training process. So you'll adjust better to flight training with the Flight Academy that's very regimented and move you really, they demand a lot of attention to detail and self-study, and they want you prepared, and I think you'll be that much ahead of the game if you have your private certificate. Now, if you have anything more than that, you might want to consider not necessarily doing it, because if you already have your instrument rating and you did that under Part 61 or even a Part 141 flight school that wasn't a university that has qualifications for restricted ATP, you wouldn't be eligible for the RATP. So you do it in a traditional way, if that makes, I don't know if I answered your question for you, but yeah, come in with a private, that's a good idea.
Yeah. On which campus do these classes take place?
We're located on the Polytechnic campus, which is in Mesa, Arizona, with the Mesa Gateway Airport. So we're co-located with the airport where you do your flight training. So basically, you can live on campus, take all your classes on the Polytechnic campus, and walk to the flight line to do your flight training.
And I think that's an unusual benefit. I think there are a lot of other programs, don't they have they have to go to an airport, have to travel to an airport to get their work done.
Exactly. The airport could be like 20 miles away from the campus, and the communication issues can occur, and it's so much better logistically here because you're able to get everything done. And again, I have to say that the Polytechnic campus, ASU's has a Tempe campus, Polytechnic campus, and 4 different campuses, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's nice about the Polytechnic campus is it has a small college feel, but you're actually in a major university. So you have all those other major university perks, like the sports teams and the activities that they do. But at least at the Polytechnic campus, it's small enough that you really know a lot of the people that that you see at the union. And if you're involved in any of the clubs, you'll get to know people. You're more of a name than a number, so to speak.
When to apply for a TSA license?
Okay, so the TSA, I'd have to defer that to Professor Files because he handles all the TSA stuff. I know that there's an international requirement that has to do with I think fingerprints and pictures and stuff like that. So if we just want to get that question either sent to me and I could forward it to Greg Files and connect you with him, I think that he'd be able to answer that for you.
I'm just I'll put Greg Files' email address in the chat feature. I also, by the way, put Kaylee Graham's email address in the chat feature. Please contact Kaylee if you want a copy of the recording of this session today. And
all
so, through professional flight, is there a form of military focus or a boost for those who want to be pilots in the military?
We do have some students who are in Air Force ROTC. Now, the Air Force ROTC is not on our campus. I think they do all their activities at the Tempe campus. It can work out where you can do your morning sessions over at Tempe and then come back out to Polytech to finish up your academic stuff and as well as your flight training. And we do have visits from pretty much every either semester or at least once a year where the military ROTC people come out to talk to students about opportunities in the different services.
And I think you mentioned a little bit of this already, but what partnership programs do you have upon graduation?
Great. I'll continue on here because I think we get to some of them here.
Okay.
So again, the professional flight career path, you complete all your flight training, and then you do your academic. You're also doing your academics at ASU. The certificates and ratings that you'll have while you're at ASU will be the private pilot certificate, or again, if you come in with one, you don't have to do that again. But also the instrument rating, the commercial multi and single engine add-on. And then we also have an optional certified flight instructor and instrument instructor. ATP offers that as well. It's optional. So you only really need to graduate as the commercial multi and single with the instrument rating. But most of our students will do the CFI with ATP because you'll end up getting hired by them. Reason why it's optional is that there are so many different flight training companies in Arizona, in the Valley, that need instructors, that a lot of them will come and recruit our graduates. And some of them actually offer some incentives to fly with them as a flight instructor. Then the programs designed to transition students into an airline, the pathway programs. And again, these were all pretty much, these airlines were coming to us to want to set these pathways up. to try to recruit you while you're here. There's no strings attached per se. They just want to be able to help you learn about their airlines, to maybe hopefully get you to kind of work with it. They tell you about their domiciles and what the work is like and what airplanes they fly. They offer mentorship, hoping that you will eventually want to go with them. Then if you do end up going with them, many of them actually have signing bonuses, and they have different incentive ways to get you to go with them. But we have SkyWest, Envoy, Wisconsin Air, Mesa Airlines, Republic Airways, ExpressJet, and Endeavor. Now, these are all regional carriers. However, we also have, well, I guess I don't have a slide there for that, but we are part of the Southwest Airlines 225 program, as well as the Delta Propel program. So, those are major air carriers now, and they're even kind of looking with universities to try to, help you learn their brand and hopefully get you to them down the way. So it's exciting, and it will be again once this, this whole COVID thing is over. But you're going to see that once the airlines come back and the airlines are back to flying at levels they were last year, there'll be lots of activities to try to recruit and get you to come to those airlines.
There is one other question. What is the class workload like for a student majoring in professional flight?
Well, again, I think it's, most of the ground schools, and this is pretty much just about any collegiate ground school, will have lectures on the topics, the aeronautical topics, but also the two things that we're trying to do in the ground schools is to get students to learn the aeronautical knowledge areas so that it'll help them on the oral portion of their check ride that they do for the certificates and ratings. But also it's to get the students to become familiar with the different knowledge tests that you'll have to take on the FAA computer test providers. So like for each certificate and rating, you have to do an actual check ride with an examiner, but also you have to pass a standardized FAA computer exam. And so the ground schools kind of are a combination of both. The lectures kind of talk about the areas that you'll be quizzed on from the examiner, and then the stage exams that you take in the ground schools will kind of prepare you for taking the actual FAA knowledge exam on the computer. So it's a matter of you reading the text, asking questions in class, and then studying for the stage exams, which we have a laboratory that's available for students to kind of practice the FAA exams and get proficient at those types of questions. So that's pretty cut and dry. And then some of the other classes, like when you get into the aviation law and the 300 and 400 level classes, you'll have some papers, obviously, and some group projects and things of that nature. But I think it's if you're really interested in aviation, this stuff should be sort of something you want to kind of absorb as a sponge, so.
Hey, Mark, there's an interesting question from a student who says, I'm going to enter the university at the age of 17 years, 3 months. Would I have access to the program, or only when I become 18?
Well, it's 17 years old to get a private certificate. Student pilot certificate is 16, 17, you can get your private certificate. 18 is for actually being eligible to take the commercial pilot check ride. I don't know if that kind of.
I think that answers it. Yeah. So student would be in good shape. Yeah.
Yep.
I think there aren't any more questions in the.
Okay, so I'll continue on, and if you students think of any other questions coming up, please chat them out. The campus, a little bit more about the campus. The campus, the Polytechnic campus originally was Williams Air Force Base, And when the base decommissioned in the early 1990s, ASU moved out two colleges. I think it was the College of Technology and it was agribusiness.
Mhm.
And they moved aviation from engineering, it was on Tempe, to the College of Technology, and subsequently we're back at engineering again. But so we were one of the programs that came to the what was called the East Campus, which is now the Polytechnic campus. So it was an Air Force base, and a very, it trained Air Force pilots from World War II on, and so it's pretty prestigious from that standpoint, and we're kind of proud that we're continuing on, we think, the excellence of pilot training on the Polytechnic campus. But anyway, what they left several different facilities on the campus, and all military bases or Air Force bases require their pilots to go through a high altitude chamber training. Basically, what you see on the screen there is a high altitude chamber. It's a very, it's a sealed compartment where they basically have these big vacuum cleaners that suck the air out of the compartment to get the pressure levels to what the air pressure would be at different altitudes. And so you have oxygen equipment in there. So you learn how to use oxygen equipment that would be on airliners if in case there were an emergency. You learn how to get that equipment working and testing to make sure it's working properly. But then when you do the actual chamber flight, it's to help you learn your personal symptoms of hypoxia. Now, hypoxia is a reduction of oxygen, lack of oxygen, that can cause cognitive problems, and you will have an academic course, about a 3-hour academics in aviation physiology before you go in the chamber. Then you go in the chamber and they actually take you up to 25,000 feet, and then you remove the oxygen mask and then just breathe normally. And what you're trying to do is learn your own symptoms of oncoming hypoxia. Now, typical ones are usually like a little bit of euphoria, maybe some tunnel vision, some tingling. And then the important thing is that once you experience that, get your mask back on and ensure that you're breathing 100% oxygen so you can recover. Because the problem is if you're breathing at that altitude level, at some point you start to lose your cognitive ability. And then that's not a good thing to have in the airplane. So this is a way that you learn your personal symptoms and how to treat it in a controlled environment. And so that you could, if you were flying in an airline and as it was a leak in the cabin and the pressure gets to the point where the altitude starts climbing in the cabin to the point where you start to feel hypoxic, you'll know enough to get your oxygen on and working and get the airplane down. So it's a valuable thing, because when I was with the airline, our training was just all talked about it. We obviously knew how to use the oxygen equipment, but we never went through anything like this. And so we had the chamber recertified, and there's a physiologist that works with different student workers, actually work as positions in the chamber. And we offer this to all students at least one time while you're here, but the pro flight students go through it twice, once in the commercial ground school and then once in aviation physiology and human factors. So it's also been used for private research. SpaceX came in and used it to test their spacesuits. We had an insulin, let's see, it was a pharmaceutical company that came in to test their insulin delivery devices to ensure that, if a person were on an airliner and the airliner decompressed, that insulin, pump would continue to work properly. So it was really good. And then from what I understand, some of the Gemini astronauts way back, before Apollo, actually went through these chambers as well. So there's a little bit of history involved with it too. And then let's see, clubs, aviation clubs on the Polytechnic campus. Now, I can't speak highly enough about these clubs because and your involvement in them, because it's a great way to meet new friends that have, shared passion and interest. it's a great way that you're all in pretty much the same classes. So a lot of times you work with them and help study together and things like that. But we have an Alpha Eta Rho, which is an aviation. It's called an aviation fraternity, but it's more like a professional organization where both men and women can join and network and go do different events. And again, it's a great way to network. Women in Aviation, which the picture you see here, and notice that it's not just for women. And it's a big, another organization that you can join that goes to the conference and contributes to a lot of activities that are on the campus. Unmanned Aerial has a Drone Devil Club. We also have an Alpha Ace Club, which is a group of pilots for different airlines that come and kind of offer mentoring services. And then our newest one is OBAP, which is the Organization of Black Aviation Professionals. And that just started last year. And so that's our 5 aviation related clubs, although you'll learn that ASU has so many different clubs and organizations to join. It's a great way, again, to meet people. But I also think it's a great way to establish a resume, because hopefully students that come to our program apply for just about any scholarship that they might meet the requirements for. And being part of a club included on the resume, especially if you become an officer with the clubs, can be kind of deal makers, because a lot of times, these scholarship committees see similar grade points and courses taken and flight experience. But if they see someone stand out, say, oh, this person was the vice president or president of a club on campus, I think that kind of goes a long way to help a decision. And then these were some things that came from 2019. Southwest 225 kicked off, as well as the American Airlines Revenue Management Pipeline for our management students. We had upgrades to pretty much all our simulators, which was a good thing to get done then. We're part of an accreditation, ABI accreditation, which universities like Embry-Riddle and University of North Dakota, all the major aviation universities are accredited. So we had our reaffirmation visit last year, which is done every 5 years, and we passed it with flying colors. So that was a good thing. And then we had for the past 2 years, and then we just did one the other day that was virtual, is an aviation panel mixer where we bring in different industry leaders who talk to kind of tell their story to the students and then have a chance to interact and answer questions, kind of like we're doing now, only you're actually hearing from people like presidents of fractional jet companies and air traffic controllers, all people in the industry that really can kind of tell you a little bit more about what the career or what the current industry is doing. So, and then twice a year, we also have industry advisory board meetings where we have people come in and look at our curriculum, make sure that we're offering the cutting edge type of topics. So those are some of the things we did. And that's pretty much all I have for the PowerPoint, but I'm still, if you still have any more questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
So Suzanne asks, in addition to applying to ASU, do we also need to apply separately to the ATP flight school? And if so, when?
No. Although I will say, with a caveat on that, before you get here, it's nice to connect with Professor Files, because there are some things that you could get done before you actually come to the campus to set up your flight account, to get your airport badge. And then someone was mentioned about the TSA stuff. You get some of that all done, so it won't have any delays getting going on flight training when you get here in the fall. So no, you don't. You just, you could come right in as a freshman, and then you're enrolled in the appropriate flight safety course. You'll get assigned an instructor, and off you go.
So you just use the regular ASU application, identify aeronautical management technology with whatever concentration you want. Admissions will admit you, and then you'll follow up the rest of it at orientation with your advisor, probably Megan McLaughlin,
Yeah.
and you'll be all set.
Yeah, and one other thing, there is one other little step you do. There is a secondary application for professional flight that kind of requires you to get your medical certificate before you come here. And it's a good idea to get the most restrictive medical, so you really know, you get the medical, the first class medical basically, which is what an airline captain would require, is required to have. That way you make sure that at least at the time you get admitted, that you have all, that you can pass a medical and at a first class medical for airline captain. Now that medical will be good for 6 years as a private pilot while you're here, so you don't have to go get another medical every year. But getting that first class ensures that you have the most stringent medical, so you don't have anything that would keep you from being a professional pilot.
Is there a flight competition team?
No, unfortunately, we don't have one. I know that there's been talk in different semesters, people have, thought about having them. And it's something we'd be very open to doing if there were enough interest in it, from not only a student standpoint, but perhaps a sponsor that could donate an aircraft for that. ATP, all their aircraft is just used for, specifically for flight training, in the curriculum, the Part 141 curriculum. So, it would have to be someone who might be able to donate that aircraft specifically for, the flight competition stuff.
So maybe join the longboard jousting team instead. Do students stay over winter and summer breaks to continue flight training? If so, are they able to stay in campus housing, and are the dining halls open?
Well, I can speak to whether the students stay over winter and summer, and that's a great way to build flight time quickly. Yeah, they do. They stay over winter and summer. I'm pretty sure that they have certain dorms might be open where they might have to move out of your other dorm to go to the one where they have, over the summer or whatnot. But I'm not sure about the dining hall options, but Mike.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. So during winter break, we have a lot of international students on campus. So they're staying here for the most part over the break. So that's not a problem. And then there is some summer housing that you'd do separately if you wanted to. Certainly there are a lot of different ways to live just off campus if you wanted to. But I'm not, I suspect the dining hall closes during winter break and opens back up when school starts back up. That doesn't mean you can't get food. There's certainly a lot of restaurants that are very close to the campus that you can pick food up from. Any suggestions for an out-of-state student to help with the help to reduce costs?
Yeah, I don't have any suggestions for that other than, again, when you get to the point where you can start applying for scholarships, I think that's the best, that's the best advice I can give. Yeah.
There's a student that maybe I can answer this question. What is if it's around admissions, you mean, what is the usual acceptance rate for professional flight students? I can tell you that admission standards for professional flight follow the regular admission standards for the university. So you're required to complete 16 core courses in high school, 4 years of math, 4 years of English, 3 years of science, 2 years of social science, 2 years of a foreign language, and 1 year of fine arts or CTE. We calculate a GPA on those courses you've completed thus far in high school through your junior year. And if you are a 3.0 or higher, you can be admitted actually to any of our programs within the Fulton Schools of Engineering, including professional flight. If you didn't happen to have the GPA, we can go to look at a test score like an ACT or SAT, or if you had a higher rank in class, top 25% in your class will get you in as well. So, I mean, if you meet those requirements, I would call it 100% acceptance rate. If you don't, then it's like more like 0. So it's either or.
Yeah, and then as far as the pro flight, we haven't had a need to cap the program for pro flight. Because of the scale of ATP, that our flight provider. So yeah, so whatever the standard admissions is fine.
So we have a question from probably a student that's already been admitted. We did get a medical exam for the FAA. The doctor sent in the form after the exam. I have not gotten anything back from them and cannot get in touch with them. Any ideas for how to get in contact with them?
Well, if you did the exam with AME, an aviation medical examiner, that is authorized to give those, FAA exams, that person should, that doctor should be able to help you as far as, the actual medical certificate. So I think I'd go back to that doctor, I think. And then if you're still having problems with that, you'd want to go to the www.faa.gov to find the flight standards district office that is, in the state that wherever you have that exam done, because those FAA people might be able to help as well.
So www.faa.gov?
Yes.
Okay. So I put that in the chat. Can we come into the university with an Associate of Arts from a community college to reduce the number of general education classes and start flight training earlier?
That's a Megan McLaughlin thing, I think, right, Mike?
Yeah. So the advisor will actually meet with you during orientation. Certainly, you could take general studies courses at the community college, and we've already pre-articulated a lot of those courses. So if you go to our transfer pathways website, just go to our degree search engine, asu.edu, type in transfer pathways, and you probably can find the articulation guide, so you're sure you're taking the right courses. But yeah, Megan McLaughlin, and I'll put her email in this area as well, so that you can get in contact with her directly if you want. I don't know much about Barrett, but is this program a little different for Barrett students?
No, actually, I have a Barrett student in my private pilot ground school right now. I get them occasionally. And what it does is you still take the regular class, but there's a contract with the instructor in the course where you have to provide, an additional project. For instance, I usually, the one I have right now is writing a paper on. He's going to actually present a weight and balance to the class, a weight and balance presentation to the class, and also write a paper on it. So usually it's a contract that's done with the course instructor, and it's really between the two of you. So there's extra work, but it doesn't really impact anything as far as the course material. You still get the same course material.
A lot of good questions here.
Yeah, they're great. These are great questions, guys and girls. It's awesome.
Yeah. The question is, are there residence halls on the Polytechnic campus?
Yeah, we have some, and there's a brand new one that is active right now too.
That's correct. Yeah, I think the Century Hall is about 10 years old, and then the brand new one just opened right next to Century Hall for another incoming 400 students or so that are incoming freshmen. So really nice facilities, and it's really close to the recreation facility, which is a beautiful facility as well, right next to the dining hall, all that stuff. So it's very, very convenient. And by the way, it looks like this for the most part, like you have 2 suites, 2 students live in one room, 2 students live in another, and then you share a common area, a bathroom area as well. And then for students that want to live on campus, want to continue to live on campus, we actually have a lot of houses that the military left us many years ago, and students have sort of turned them into apartment style living. So everybody has their own bedroom, they have a driveway, it's kind of a unique situation. Are there opportunities to get certified on other planes in addition to Cessna 172s?
Well, the Cessna 172 is ATP's single engine trainer, and the multi-engine trainer is the Piper Seminole. Now, that being said, students who want to kind of fly some other airplanes, some of our students actually will go and get checked out at one of the different airports that might rent different airplanes, to get experience in those. But the only two that ATP uses are the Cessna 172s and the Piper Seminole.
So what is the process for scheduling a campus visit specifically for professional flight program? I'll take a stab at that, and then Mark, if you're doing anything unique, let me know. But right now we are not able to have students visit campus through the Fulton Schools of Engineering. As a matter of fact, there's a tri-university agreement that we can't visit the high schools either at this point in time. And so what we're doing is we're doing virtual visits through the admissions office. You can sign up for a virtual visit with admissions, and then you sign up for an academic session within the Fulton Schools of Engineering, and then we have a virtual presentation like we have today. But until things have changed and gotten better, I think for the foreseeable future, that's the position we're in right now. And our orientations will be virtual, so on and so forth. What activities do they have for the students during COVID?
Classes. No. Sorry about that. I don't know, Mike. I don't think there's any mass gathering type stuff, but I'm sure maybe some of the clubs are doing, virtual Zoom, meetings and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in the residential halls, certainly students are living together and by the way, being tested regularly. And they have to submit every day sort of a COVID a check on themselves. And then there's random testing that goes on constantly. So we're keeping things down to a minimum, and tracing as we need to, and all that kind of thing. So we're doing everything that CDC and the health professionals on our campuses are asking us to do. But when you're in the residential hall and everybody's trying to keep safe, I think there are some common areas where students get together and they watch the professional football games on TV. They still play, their games on the TV. They still do all kinds of stuff like that. I think the theaters have opened up locally, but they're, you got to spread out. So it's, things like that are still available, certainly. And I think we're just not seeing, as Mark said, the big groups, big gatherings together. We're certainly not going to, football's going to start back up for us next week, and you'll see sparse folks in the stadium. So we're not doing any of that. And the student organizations still do all their fun work, and they're getting together, and a lot of that stuff is in the Fulton Schools of Engineering ends up being outdoors when you're testing it anyway. So, and at night I see all kinds of students out there with their masks on, competing in flag football and softball and whatever sports you can possibly think of. Sand volleyball is a big deal here. One more question: what are the expected flight costs? Right,
that's an important question to ask in any kind of collegiate flight program, because the flight training is expensive. It's hard to put an exact number on it because of everyone aviation is one of those things where some students take right kind of close to the minimum amount of flight time that's required, but then students that for different reasons that take longer, that's where the expenses go up. So ASU's tuition is separate from these flight costs. So the flight costs I'm going to give you is pretty much what we try to let people know when they come here. From if you came without a private certificate through the commercial multi, which is sort of the end of the game there, is about $75,000 just in flight costs. And what they did is ATP kind of put that together based on not just the minimum, but I think it was a 20% kind of additional to give a ballpark figure of what the average student might expect to incur in flight training costs. So it's an expensive endeavor for sure.
And then finally, I'd say Naomi says, thank you very much for the presentation, and it's very helpful. So thank you, Mark, for that. We've reached our time limit, but all the email addresses are in that chat feature. So if you want to copy them real quickly, if you haven't done so already, and that includes Gregory Files, if you need to TSA work. Megan McLaughlin is your academic advisor for any questions on transfer work or what you might be registered for in your first semester. And then Mark O'Brien's email address is in there as well. And obviously Mark presented today. And then Kaylee Graham, if you want a copy of this session, she can get you connected to a copy of the session if you need to show it to anybody else. But we appreciate you all being here. And thank you, Andrew.
And I'd like to compliment all you students on the great questions you had. These were awesome questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. Well, Mark, thank you.
Yep.
I'll leave you. Have a good night. And,
all right. You too. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care.